And now back to the Kovac's Perspective.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Steve Kovac with you. Our next guest is a 29-year federal career specialist or professional as a special agent and resident agent in charge with both the U.S. Customs Service and the Department of Homeland Security. He's written a book, and I've read some of the book, and the only reason I've read some of it, I just got it a few days ago, and I'm not done with it, and it's a very well-written book. It's really done well. It's called Homeland Insecurity, Failed Politics, Policies, and a Nation at Risk. Introducing Brett Braaten. How are you, Brett?
Very well. It's great to be here.
Hey, Brett, I'm very happy to have you. I want to jump right into it. You were in the system, the federal law enforcement system, for 29 years, and I know a little bit about where your book is going, but tell me you had a lot of positives, and you've done a lot for the government, and I personally want to thank you for being one of the people that put your sanity and also your life on line so I can sleep better at night, and our listeners can in the United States. So thank you for that. But tell me the bad stuff, Brett. What are we doing incorrectly in the bureaucracy of our federal law enforcement system?
There was a study that came out that Congressional Subcommittee on Homeland Security did in November of '92, and it was out after my book was published. Some of the major findings in light of what the push is for the amnesty program, open borders policy, where there's no contingent plan for securing the borders and allowing amnesty for all the illegals, is that we have a southwest border that's completely wide open. Some of the findings, and just to mention a couple of them, we have Hezbollah now, according to Congress, on both sides of the border. Hezbollah is now working with the Mexican drug cartels. The Mexican drug cartels were trying to assist Iranian forces to get to Washington to assassinate the ambassador from Saudi Arabia. So all of this is threatening us, including Iran is building a presence in Central and South America with embassies and other outreach programs. They've also had Turkish customs seized a few years ago a shipment of devices and chemicals and lab equipment destined to Venezuela that was used to make chemical weapons. So we had problems. We have problems with Iran on both sides of the pond right now. And to throw the borders open and say it's safer than it's ever been is just a bold-faced falsehood in my book.
Well, I have to agree with you. I mean, Brett, first of all, before I even get into this, and I just have to preface this because some people may look at it differently, I'm a first-generation American. All my relatives were immigrants, everyone. Every piece of my bloodline came here just in the 50s or 40s, 1940s. I love immigrants. I mean, they make America what it is. I'm telling you, one of the reasons America is so fantastic is we have Mexicans, Irish, Italian, et cetera, et cetera. But all my folks came in legally. They jumped through the hoops, and they all became very, very. They just worked hard, and they became successful. I cannot imagine a border being wide open as it is on both ends of America, and then thinking that we're safe from people that may want to do harm to others or us. It just makes no sense to me. How can some people believe that nonsense, Brett? I mean, come on. How can they?
I really can't explain that except to say Congress has acknowledged that the airports have been tightened, security, TSA. The southwest border is the linchpin of the attacks that could occur. And it's just a matter, I think, of when, not if. And it's difficult to imagine the American public being able to absorb another attack, as what you can see in your screen, some of the highlights of the World Trade Center attack. How this country is going to be able to absorb the damage and the shock of that sort of thing happening again.
Okay, I've got to ask you this, and I don't want to belabor this topic too much because this is a show and a half and 4 shows just in its own right. But you as an expert, and that's exactly what you are. 29 years in the system, you still have ties with federal law enforcement agents. I mean, it's just the way it goes, and you've researched your book and you put your thoughts into this subject matter. How do we secure? Let's go to the southern border. How do we secure the southern border?
We had 1,200 troops up until a year or two ago when they started getting drawn down to 300. Now we're replacing boots on the ground with really untried and untested technology, which just hasn't historically held up under those kind of adverse situations. So we've had 600 miles of fence of 1,954 miles built in those areas where the fence was built. The crime rate went down. We have states now that are trying to do battle with the federal government, who's doing battle, on the other hand, with the American people, saying, okay, in response to the Supreme Court decision which favors Arizona being able to ask aliens for their identification to prove that they're here legally, we're going to go ahead and cut off all the assistance that we were giving when I was working to state and local law enforcement to get illegals deported once they've been arrested for something else. So it's this response that I'm seeing that we did not see in 29 years. And add to that this ammunition purchase, which a lot of people are buzzing about, the 1.6 billion rounds that DHS has purchased, along with 2,600 armored personnel carriers that are coming, I guess, out of the theater of conflict with Kuwait and Iraq, which have no legitimate practical use with DHS. In all those years that I was an agent doing search warrants, we never used armored personnel carriers. So it's getting to the point now where, because we are a compliant population, we are saying, go ahead and you can put the drones over our cities, you can watch for people who have guns. And a lot of people are saying that's okay. And I sit back as an experienced federal agent, never having seen this before, and say, this is precedent setting. I think we have to be worried about this.
Well, tell me, why do you think they're getting these armored personnel carriers? I've heard a little bit about this. I mean, why is the government getting that? You tell me, what's going on?
As I said, in 29 years, they're just not used, unless you're in a hostage situation like they had down in Swanee, Georgia today, where 4 firemen were held hostage and they ended up killing the gunman. I don't know of a situation in any of the warrants we ever did as customs agents before the merger and later on as Immigration Customs Enforcement and Homeland Security that there would ever be a need, except to put it in the 4th of July parade with the fire trucks, to say this is what Homeland Security has. I mean, that's the only time it's used. The FEMA trailers that came out of Katrina, up in Minnesota, they ended up on the Canadian border in the middle of nowhere because there was no use for them. So they're essentially up there rusting away in the wilderness on the Canadian border. So I don't know what in the world the people who are getting a hold of these are going to use them for, because I cannot imagine, nor can my colleagues, thinking about the rounds, the 1.6 billion rounds purchased, or these armored personnel carriers, and they're in the game still. They haven't the foggiest idea at uppermost levels as to what's going on.
Interesting topic. Maybe we'll have you on again, Brett, if you're available, to talk more about these specifics. But Brett, your book covers areas that how politics and I know the system that you're in a little bit also. What makes people want to get promoted, and people care maybe more about getting up the ladder in the federal law enforcement system. So they just maybe don't do the right thing, or they just want to make numbers. But I guess what I want to ask you here is why? Why is our government, or is this not in your level of expertise, why are we allowing this to occur on our southern border? And then we're going to leave it at this. But why is this occurring? Why are we not doing more to stop the sieve of bad possibilities coming in? What's your opinion?
My opinion is that, and when you have Homeland Security people, Immigration Customs people, detention removal officers suing the government because the government's saying, don't go out and do your job, it's straight up politics. It's catering to the Hispanic vote. We had Reagan in his day got, I think, less than 35% of the Hispanic vote. George W. Bush got less than 30%. So there's this little swing of 5-6% that the conservatives, the Republicans, seem to be worried about. And they're so willing to make a compromise with the Democrats, apparently on the southwest border, for this amnesty program, thinking all the while, I think, that they're going to whittle away at what the Democrats' lead is with Hispanic votes. And I don't think it's going to happen. It didn't happen with Reagan, who did have amnesty. And George Bush pushed for a guest worker program early on in his administration, finished up strong, though, with a lot of worksite enforcement. As far as agencies getting along, the FBI is a premier law enforcement agency. It doesn't have time for the rest of us. It never did. It's got the equipment and it's got the horsepower, and there's a problem. That's human nature. That's just the way it is.
It's just the way it is. It's human nature. Do you think that politics will stop? You know, Brett, I want to say, I believe that there may come a time where we just are forced to take the bull by the horns and start making some common sense decisions with our border. You know what scares me, and maybe you can enlighten us and give us your opinion on this. 2 prosecutors, I believe, was it in Colorado, Brett, that were killed? Is that Colorado?
Yeah, I think it was, yes.
And wasn't there something? I guess what I'm getting at, Brett, is my fear is that the major drug violence against law enforcement in Mexico is going to bleed over to the border, where, you know, right across the border, where you have a chief of police or you have a small department with 15 guys in it, and they make a bust or two. If that ever happens, God forbid, I can see America then going, I'm tired of it. That's it. We're not going to turn into a third world country and let this kind of violence bleed over to officials. Maybe then we'll take the bull by the horns. Does that make any sense to you? Do you think something drastic has to happen for our politicians to get their heads out of the sand?
Here's what the politicians know. In El Paso, Texas, in February, 2 Hispanic males, both ICE informants, both documented informants by the government. One of them was working very closely against the drug cartels with Immigration Customs and really its Homeland Security investigations. They're both in El Paso. The other informant working for Immigration Customs or Homeland Security investigation gets the order from the cartel, who he's still in bed with, to kill informant A. So we have 2 ICE informants knowing of each other's existence, whereas ICE informant A is the guy who's helping us, and ICE informant B is the double agent. He ends up getting the informant, the first informant, killed in El Paso. The agents had a chance to intervene to stop the assassination, and they did nothing. So it's already here. It's been here for a long time. In this report that I referred to, we have Texas Department of Public Safety said they've been shot at 58 different times since 2009. They're taking fire. And we have our Border Patrol agents down and on the line shooting non-lethal beanbag rounds, which is how Brian Terry was killed. That's what he was equipped with in his 12-gauge shotgun, a non-lethal beanbag round. He was shot through the aorta with an AK-47. And this is how we're approaching this. This is armed conflict. This is incursion of unfriendlies into our territory, where we have now ceded all this territory. We have national monuments down there in Arizona and Texas, which we can't use anymore because it's too dangerous. And it's the new normal. We say, well, that's just the way it is. Wow.
You know, I don't think the media covers a whole bunch of that, though, do they, Brett?
I just made a contact with a former producer from CBS and ABC as it relates to this book. We're going to be meeting here in the coming few days, but he has said they went out to get the story, and around 9/11, they had information that they wanted to develop, and they were reeled in. They were told, you're in a bubble in New York City, and you're not getting out of it to cover what really matters. So this is why we're not getting the whole truth. That's why it takes a book like this for someone who's hopefully done in out of harm's way in terms of retirement and living, to say, you know, the gloves are off. It's time that people get the blinders off and are told the truth. You know, you hope it resonates. You really do, because I want people to stay motivated to do something about it. But unfortunately, we may have to wait till the next election cycle.
Well, and that's it. Brett, I mean...